Okay, so there is empirical evidence
Yeah.
that that women find married men more attractive, and that
Okay.
wedding rings more attractive. So my argument is that it's ethical to wear a fake wedding ring because you're drawing women away from men who are actually married. Would would you agree or disagree with that? Assuming that those effects are prevail, that you actually are drawing women who would actually go for married men to you instead, and that you're minimizing harm from that. And I discussed that would
I
also have.
mean, yeah, sure, I'll respond. So if it's like one person who does it, I guess you might reduce an instance of, I don't know, whatever the consequence of that is, cheating, I guess.
Okay, so
But
that feels like
two problems. One, if you like widespread adopted, it would like fail because like the signaling effect of the wedding band
that
would no
feels like an
longer
oversimple.
exist. And then two, I don't know if it's probably wise to be starting off a relationship by deceiving somebody, and also even if it's a one night stand, probably not also great to be like manipulating someone in that kind of way. Seems a little dishonest and scummy.
Okay, so I actually agree with you about it becoming widespread. My argument is that it actually be good if it's widespread. You see, I think that there are two sets of effects that are good, and I've discussed this in DMs, making this up. Like, sorry, post them. You're free to post.
Just make the points. It's all meta stuff. I don't want to hear the meta
My
stuff.
point,
Just say your thoughts.
my point is that I think it would be good if the practice became widespread because you'd no longer be able to tell the males that are married and that aren't. And I think that could be a good thing. As for the other,
Why? You just have different signaling effects for people. You just get something else like a necklace or a second wedding band. I mean, it wouldn't
no, I
work.
would diminish the institution altogether. I'd argue actually that it would lead to getting some sort of tattoo or something that isn't easily visible, but would still demarcate you as being married.
Why?
Like, because
Wait. Sorry. Let me.
you'll
Sorry.
have
Why do you think people wear wedding rings?
to show that they are with somebody.
So aren't they gonna still find something to show that they're with somebody?
No.
Yes, but I'm arguing that they would
No.
put it body that is not visible to the public, so you could still retain the effect if my practice became widespread, so you could still retain the effects of that, but you would.
There's no
But
point.
we
There's no point in
agree. Hold on, drunky boy. We agree that the point of them is to show other people that we're married, right?
Yes, but I'm
So
saying,
why? So just let me ask before you respond. It's a
all right,
two-parter, please.
all right.
So the second question is, why wouldn't married people still find an alternative replacement that accomplishes the same effect, that still shows that they're married?
Because other people who aren't married, if they indulge in the practice that I described, would nullify effects. So my
So you're
argument,
saying they're going to continually copy them?
no, I'm saying that what I think would happen is I think that people would still do that for males who are married, but they would put the symbol somewhere that isn't easily accessible. So when you're cheating with somebody, you don't know that the
Why?
person until they're exposed in private, and then the person would be shocked and then not go with them. And the
Sorry,
reason
so you're saying that, just to clarify,
I
so
was
you're saying the married couple. I just need to clarify because you're going off into more stuff.
no, I wasn't finished yet.
I know,
Because
but I need to
it was
clarify. Like to understand everything that you're saying, I need to make sure I understand the first part of what you're saying, right? So I want to
all right.
clarify.
All right then.
To clarify, did you say, by the way, all the time we're wasting now makes it harder to retain the thoughts of what you're talking? Just to clarify, you're saying that the married couple would find like more discreet ways to signal that they are married. Is that right? Or was that something else?
Yes. If
Okay, continue.
and the reason why I'd argue this is good is just because if the person is exposed in private and the person that they are cheating with only realizes it then, it would still have the effect of warding off people who think that they're single because the person who's cheating could just take off the wedding ring or something like that, whatever more permanent fixture on a part of the body that isn't visible. My argument is that if that's retained, you still get the effects of signaling that you're married, but you don't but you lose the effects of signaling that you're married to people who'd actually like that, because if the husband's if or wife or anyone is going to cheat, then it would still happen, but it would minimize people just walking up to your spouse because they're married.
Okay, so just to be clear, just like a easy yes or no, do you have evidence that says that so I know you have evidence that says that they find them more attractive, but do you have evidence that says that wearing a wedding ring is like more successful in picking someone up? So just the reason I ask this is because just like anecdotally and culturally, you often see the cliche is actually more that the cheating husband takes the wedding ring off and then like goes to a bar, because a lot of people will choose not to approach the man who has a wedding ring, even if it's the case that they are more attracted to that person. So do you have the empirical evidence for the second question?
Actually, no. The best empirical evidence I have is a poll that said that when the women didn't know that the person they were being shown was married, that only 59% would be interested in like pursuing something.
Yeah.
Whereas it increased to 90% when said that they did. And so I guess that would be indirect evidence that shows that they're not just attracted, that they would actually consider something, but I haven't read the poll.
No. So I think you're missing my point still a little bit. So
No,
I doubt the number is that big of a difference, but I believe you that it does make an increase. Like we can just call that a totally like indisputable premise here for the sake of the conversation. But even if that's true, that increase doesn't actually mean that wearing a wedding ring leads to like more infidelity. In fact, it might be the reverse might be the case, that taking off the wedding ring produces more infidelity.
Yeah, I mean,
the thing is that, and I'm not trying to anger you, but I was actually about to say that before. I was actually about to say, but still, that's indirect. And I was actually going to concede. I think I agree with you. I think I'll concede that point because, and I do admit that lots of my hypothesizing is speculative. So I think I agree with you. I don't think that there's enough evidence to warrant the use of the practice. I would need more empirical evidence. So I concede. Okay. I grant you victory.
No, it's not. You don't need more empirical evidence. It's just obvious that a girl isn't gonna go for a married guy. I mean, you're gonna look at the married guy.
I don't know if it's obvious, but
I think it's pretty obvious that most girls will be like, "Oh, that guy has he's attractive," right? And then they're gonna look at the guy right afterwards who doesn't have a ring.
So I think the larger issue here, which I want an answer to, Sen, still is why. I didn't hear an answer for why they're going to move from something not discreet to something discreet, in your view.
The reason I think that would happen, and the reason I think that would happen is because, and I also need to add that I think a permanent fixture that would get.
Fine, just say why you think it would happen.
I think it would happen because it would eliminate the effect, because there would be no recurrence of copying the new things if it was visible. But if you increase the cost of removing a ring, like you said, you could still have the signaling. And it being discreet means it would only happen if the person's actually cheating and they're exposed, so they wouldn't do that. So it's simple, actually, from crude.
Sorry, let me just clarify. The argument is like they're going to be dissuaded from doing something more of like a public signaling because they expect the non-married people to copy them again. It's going to be like tiresome and they don't want to bother with it. So they do something more discreet.
Yeah, that was part.
Surely,
why do you think this like world will play out in this way? I mean, doesn't it sound pretty
assuming that
ludicrous?
We're at 5 levels of game theory.
This is assuming people decide to copy it, to be clear, which I don't think. This is assuming that people will copy it, which I don't think would happen. I'm just saying if they copied it, I think that would happen.
I'm not even sure the fact that they would copy it would entail that they would be willing to continually copy it over and over again. Nor, for example, it seems like there would be ways, there's like with how technology is, it seems like there'd probably be ways actually to prove that some people are married and some people aren't, some kind of signaling effect. I don't know, anything from like NFTs, like some other kind of weird kind of technology to produce that fact.
So like a ring with a barcode on it?
Yeah, I mean, that would probably look like hideous, but that's conceptually the right idea, yeah.
Yes, I see. My point is that, to be clear, I think that they would make it a permanent fixture on a part of the bar. Actually, come to think of it, I actually don't think that. I think I agree with you. I think that I don't think that it's a foregone conclusion. What I'm saying is, because they probably would.
Keep going. You're just echoing on Zara.
Sorry.
That was pretty funny. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think I agree. Yes.
So as I this is a casual win for me. Is that right?
Well, yes, it is.
All right, cool.
W. Wait, but I made the same points.
Even
though.
even the casual dubs I pick up. Let's go. I'm sorry, Zara. Did he ever say that you were correct? Like he did right now to
shut
me?
Zara,
Embarrassing.
you leaked M's. It was very interesting. Just leak them.
I don't care that much. I don't need the accolade that much. But I was thinking. I mean, I guess I just wanted to throw one point in the ring, which was like even so if you imagine a scenario where it becomes widespread that rings, even the single guys are wearing rings these days. So like even assuming a new a new kind of jewelry or new way of wearing a ring or something like that catches on, right? And that's the new one. And then that one gets undermined, and then it's a new one after that. Eventually, there won't be. Eventually, even if you introduce a new kind of jewelry to signify that, people just won't trust it off the bat. Eventually, they'll just be like, we've had multiple cases where new kinds of jewelry is used by single people to pick up chicks. So I'm just not even gonna think this supposedly new one is worn by actually married men, right? Or only worn by actually married men. Is the only thing I wanted to say. Just could basically Duke summarize everyone.
Just a bad version of my godly argument.
So yeah, do we have anything else to talk about?
Oh wait, is that God Queen?
That's an interesting thing.
Is that God? You said that in a voice like you're a tier 3 sub to this person. Oh, is that God Queen? Oh my God!
Well, I must say this is just an olive branch, but I must say that I'm willing to discuss our differences, God Queen, if you're willing to unblock
PJ, bless
DMs.
us with your voice again, please.
Wait, did she say did she actually talk?
To me,
Her voice.
Yeah.
To me. Also, it's a he, not a she.
Wait, I thought. Wait, no,
It's he. It's
Oh.
he.
Oh no no no.
I'm laying down the law. It's he.
my
What?
That's all right.
Hey Frank, by the way, did you
Frank,
have you eaten any more fruits?
what's the last? I haven't made like a lot of videos.
Okay, last time you were on, I was wondering if you eat a pomegranate, something like that.
I have not.
All right then. I am a bit bored.
The last thing I've eaten is a banana. That's about it.
Hey,
non-binary,
SYND.
got it. Shut up.
What is it?
So I have like it's a spicy question for you. It's not meant to be a gotcha. Don't try to take it that way. So one issue that I have with a lot of the way you approach kind of the world and your prescriptions for things, like the wedding ring kind of stuff,
Yes.
is that you seem to be very kind of entrenched in the like political science kind of way of approaching things. And it seems to go against the grain of a lot of like other moral issues that people have, or like intuitively different opinions on things. So I'll kind of stop beating around the bush here and kind of go straight forward to the jugular here. It seems like the kind of approach that you typically take is, oh yeah, there's empirical evidence that says doing X will produce lots of harms, so we shouldn't do it, or doing Y produces lots of good things, so we should do it. With that being said, at the very least, for the last like 50 years, probably still today, maybe not at this exact year, but you can make a pretty good empirical case that it is a bad idea for trans people to openly declare things about themselves, like the fact that they're trans or having pronouns, because of a lot of like the hate they're going to get, maybe even like sexual assault or rape or acts of violence. And it seems like your position, your prescription would say something like, we shouldn't have trans people in society because it produces, like, we shouldn't respect trans people in society or acknowledge it because it opens them up to lots of like violence and things that are bad. Whereas most people would like, a more like liberal person would take a more like moralizing position and say, well, even if these like negative consequences might happen, it's wrong and we should respect these people. It's like a human rights kind of issue, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, you can respond to that however you wish.
Well, I don't really I haven't focused much on trans issues, but regarding but regarding that, the way that I think of that is that when you have stuff like that, to where the harm comes from just you saying something, the way that you address the harm, if it's coming from active agents and beliefs, it would be a much better long-term solution to fix the beliefs that are actually causing the harm. Because I wouldn't argue that the people who are just simply proclaiming statements or identifying as something, I don't really think that they're causing the harm in the same way. I don't think that someone's saying something, I don't think that it's reasonable to suggest that what they're saying is causing harm because other people feel a certain way about it.
I'm not saying it causes harm. I'm saying that like doing it's like different. I guess it's kind of a cause, but not the same one you seem to be talking about. But it's like the choice to do this will inevitably result in like some kind of harm. My broader point is it sounds like your sort of approach often like justifies like victim blaming, which people typically wouldn't be too big of a fan of. Here's another example. Since you said you're not like much into like trans issues, another example could be like probably not very good today, but definitely good in, maybe like 1950 or something. But imagine we lived in 1950, so like the empirical evidence is very clear. Women who like go out at night and like wear short skirts are very likely to be raped, and it's a really bad experience for them. So my prescription is that we should not like discourage women from like wearing short skirts. And most people would probably reply in some kind of way that says like, well, we shouldn't have a society like that. It's like kind of wrong. Like morally speaking, like, they're not respecting themselves as having like a autonomy, those kinds of things. But your like kind of like empirical evidence approach would say, no, we should do these sorts of things.
No, I don't think it would, because first of all, you're holding back progress and therefore possibilities, because it'd be much easier once you have a society to where that doesn't happen anymore. It'd be much more difficult at that.
Okay.
I actually like to think about this.
Yeah. Well, I won't push on that directly. I'm going to connect this back to the wedding ring example. I know you kind of like half conceded it, whatever, but the reason why is
I said one. I didn't half concede. I agree.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, fine. I was trying to be I wasn't trying to I was trying to do that like to be nice, to not make it sound like I'm just claiming a win. But sure, if you want to give it to me all the way, then I won't say half concede.
Yes,
so
I did.
I know you kind of conceded it. So don't interpret it as me, thinking you think you're still correct on it, I guess. But I just saying it anyway, I think elucidates a point. It seems like one of the replies to the wedding ring example you're talking about can just be something like, well, the real point is that it's wrong that people cheat. And we shouldn't be doing something like trying to blame people for having like wedding rings that causes other people to do bad things. Like that's kind of victim blaming those people having the expression of like their marriage publicly. Rather, we should be thinking of other like things that are more directly attacking the fact that people choose to cheat on others. So my point is that like I think the more intuitive response that most people would give to the wedding ring example is the same kind of response to the short skirt kind of thing. But you seem to be thinking just directly in that empirical evidence kind of setting. I know you conceded it, but I think there's a broader point to make as well with the description that you're going for.
Oh, I see. Well, with the wedding ring thing is actually a bit more nuance to that, because one, the intent of the practice was not only for the person who's trying to get a direct benefit from it, but it's also for the long term. Assuming that what I was saying was correct, which it wasn't. I don't have any evidence to justify it, and there's plenty of evidence against that. But my point was that over long term, it would help diminish cheating, and because it would punish the person who's trying to cheat with somebody, and also make it harder for people who want to cheat to. It would make it harder for them to cheat because they can't really distinguish themselves as easily as they used to.
So couldn't that same kind of logic, though? I mean, I kind of get what you're saying, but couldn't that same kind of logic apply to something like wearing burqas for women? Like, well, we can reduce like lots of like rapes and like sexual violence if like men can't even tell if the person going down the street is a man or a woman, and if they can't even tell, they're much less likely to do like catcalling or sexual assault or even a rape. So in the long term, it would produce good benefits.
Yeah, but if it's involuntary, you're creating many more problems. So,
like forcing it.
Yes.
Okay. But I'm saying it seems to cut both ways. So in your wedding ring situation, forcing wedding rings would be a terrible idea. Just like forcing women to like wear burqas might be a bad idea. And then if we grant you the idea that collectively we kind of decide to put wedding rings on, it seems like the same kind of bad thing if like we collectively decide to like wear burqas.
Well, what do you mean by collectively decide? Do you mean like what is collective decision making in this context? Please
Well,
say.
It's simple. I mean, think of a society that culturally reinforces, like a lot of like Muslim societies that culturally reinforce wearing burqas.
Oh, I see. Yeah, if you're talking about cultural pressure, no, I still probably wouldn't agree. But if the majority of people just decide to do it but don't care if other people don't, then I guess I would be fine with that.
And so now it sounds like, so the problem is now it sounds like the hypothetical is so bizarre that we're somehow living in this alternative reality that people are like freely and like benevolently choosing to do something like all put it on a wedding ring. Yet for some reason, the society also has like the identical malevolent cheating actors of the status quo. But it seems like those would be gone too in the world where we start adopting some of the hypothetical that we're talking about.
Oh, wait a second. I think I misunderstood what you're saying. So to be clear, is your point that to fix the problem of cheating, you shouldn't do that because you're not going to the root of what the problem is? Cheating, you're like, I just don't.
I'm saying that the prescription that you're giving, it describes a kind of victim blaming that's not too dissimilar from things like saying women shouldn't wear like revealing clothing because empirically it can produce bad harms for them.
That's the part that I don't quite get. How is it victim blaming? That's what I don't.
Well, I wouldn't say you should be too hung up on the phrase victim blaming.
I'd like to know like why you think it is that, like, how is that at all? Because all I'm suggesting,
I think I can. It's not so much that he thinks you're actually blaming the victim, but I'm sure there's a twofold point. One, there's the cost of we're undermining the institution of wearing rings, which is kind of a cost itself. And two, I'm sure a lot of people could interpret that as, oh, we're getting punished. We're the ones on the receiving end of the punishment for behavior that we don't condone, that we're not involved with. I think that's
to put that more concretely really quickly for you, it's like the people who are in a good marriage are being punished because other people are cheating with like adulterers.
I actually didn't think of it from that angle before. So you're suggesting that people who like wearing wedding rings would feel punished for wearing them if other people decide to wear them.
Yeah, they're getting punished in a society that starts adopting something like everybody wearing wedding rings. They're getting punished for this.
How are they getting punished though? Like, what does it matter?
Because their ability to express the fact that they have like a sovereign marriage is diminished, right? That's because otherwise your system doesn't work.
Okay, so I don't really think that anyone. That's interesting. I've never really thought of it from that angle before. So you're suggesting that
why?
What? Duke, I know what you were suggesting, but I really don't think that was helpful, with all due respect. But I just don't really think that it would be. I don't think it's a good idea when other people do. That's like, for example, here's an example. This is why I don't agree with that kind of approach. That's like keeping zoning laws because you are infringing on the ability of rent seekers to get more money from their properties. That's like the same thing as that. That's why
I don't see how that analogy tracks at all.
It does, because zoning laws, you're preventing somebody from doing something, or preventing builders from building the kinds of buildings that you want, or preventing somebody from moving into a trailer home next to you.
The reason why it's
still trying, Duke, with all due respect, I'm still trying.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So the homeowners can have higher property values, so you have zoning laws, but I still don't think that really matters in that case, because in the long run, there's more good from having less zoning laws, because I don't really think that a certain sense of the population, like rent seekers, should be able to make more money simply by preventing other people from doing things that aren't harmful and are more beneficial to society as a whole. So I don't think that's...
So the reason why I would say this is disanalogous.
How is it disanalogous? All right.
This seems disanalogous because in one case, ostensibly, like either like the property owner is exploiting somebody, or the zoning laws are benefiting somebody who is hurting other people. And then that's like taken away from them. But in the other context, like someone who is like choosing to wear like a wedding ring to express their marriage, and they're not cheating or doing anything wrong whatsoever. They're not doing anything wrong whatsoever, yet they're being punished. So there's a disanalogy, because in the wedding ring scenario, there is someone who's being like unfairly, unjustly punished who did nothing wrong. And I don't think there's someone who did nothing wrong that's being punished in the zoning description that you're talking about.
Okay, so I think I see why I have a problem with this now. So when you're talking about all of the damages here, these damages are entirely subjective. Like, it's entirely subjective that the value is less because more people have wedding rings. Yes, there are some components. Yes, if it's more abundant, then yes, you can, of course, argue and demonstrate that more that they can't exactly have as much sentimental value now because it's not as unique as much anymore. But at the same time, when it's largely in the realm of the subjective like this, I don't really think that people's subjective values should overrule someone else being able to do something if there's no material physical harm.
I'm not really sure why we're talking about like subjective value versus. I don't really know what the relevance of that is. Like, I think we both probably agree.
Because it's completely subjective. Like, you can wear a wedding ring and it can be the best thing in the world for you. It doesn't have to be affected by other people wearing wedding rings too. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. So I don't think...
But surely you agree in this... Okay, you agree that, like, let's say I'm in a healthy marriage with Stackhouse, which is going to happen probably in a few years.
Right.
I'm in a healthy marriage with Stackhouse, and I wear a wedding ring, and I express this and I like the fact that I can express... I can let it kind of signal that I'm with this person, I'm faithful, et cetera, right?
Right.
Now, if your world happens, I lose the ability to express that, right?
You can still express it.
I can't express it publicly in the same kind of way, right? That's why the wedding ring. That's like you agreed. That's like at least a big part of why the wedding ring exists.
Okay.
Right.
So I don't think that
wait, just go one step by step. You agree to that?
You're done talking. Sorry. Please advance.
Well, I was done talking, but I want you to like agree or disagree, but not like jump into what your talking point is. I just want you to agree or disagree and let me continue, because I have more things to say clearly.
It wasn't clear to me. I apologize.
Okay, so you agree with this though, right?
Could you please restate it? I lost it.
You agree that in your world, I kind of lose the ability to like publicly express that I'm married, because it's the same as like wearing shoes now.
I disagree. I don't think that you can express...
Why?
Because you don't have a right for people to pay attention to you. Like, I don't really see that as... I mean, you're saying that...
My question is, does the ring... I'll be more honest, does the ring lose the ability to express that I am in a marriage with somebody else, and then I'm like committed to it?
No, because you and your partner know what it's for. Other people don't need to know what it's for you to
That's not my question. That's not my question. Do I lose the ability to publicly express that I'm married to this person and faithful to them, et cetera, et cetera?
No, because you can still say that it's what it's for. No, you don't. It really doesn't need to mean that, because people still know what wedding rings were for. It's just so common that it may or may not mean that. but you can still.
I don't know why you think your situation worked at all. Even the first, I know you ended up hey Bottle, I know you ended up not believing or I know you ended up agreeing with what I was saying, but I don't even know how you agree with the first part of your premise anymore. How did you think at all that what everybody adopting wedding rings was going to do anything? Because you're completely pushing back on the idea that I lose something. Like I don't know how I can't lose something, yet your policy does something.
Okay, so the thing that I still like to focus on the public expression thing, because I think that's important. If you still have the ability to publicly express something, like you're wearing a ring to express something.
Yeah.
And please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that you think just because everyone else is wearing a wedding ring, that because that makes it so most people don't think that you're married anymore because everyone's wearing it, so you're no longer able to make it clear to have someone look at you and know that you're married because of that. I don't necessarily think that means that you can't publicly express it, because you're still doing something in public.
Wait, I don't disagree that it's possible you could find a way to publicly express it, but this method doesn't work anymore, right?
Right, but I
Okay.
don't really think that it's as much. Actually, no, that's something different.
Okay,
Please.
so this is so this is where I want to go with this. So we agree that this method is diminished. Otherwise, I don't know how you could even think your empirical or your prescription had any ground whatsoever. Like clearly it has to be diminished in some way.
I agree
So-
that the is diminished.
Okay. So if it's diminished, then I am punished in some kind of way because I lost some kind of the wedding ring is a simple, easy ability to signal it. I'm not shouting it or I'm not getting people's faces and making it very doing active things to make it really obvious that I'm married. So it's a small, subtle, simple thing that I can signal publicly and have a nice little reminder for myself. So it's kind of the perfect method of showing that you're married right now. So it sounds like in your world, those people get punished. So the point is, if the disanalogy is that this prescription has somebody who seems to be getting just straight up unfairly punished, and it doesn't seem like there's someone who's getting straight up unfairly punished in the zoning example that you gave.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I think at this point, based off of this, I think I just disagree with you that someone's right to publicly express something, and purely in the realm of the subjective, because you're still able to wear a ring, you're still able to do anything. I don't think that someone's right to have a collective subjective response to an action. I don't think that overrides someone else's ability to do something physically, like wearing a fake one. I think it's more important that somebody be able to wear a fake one than it is for somebody to receive a subjective response to an action.
Why do you think it's more? Why? Yeah, why?
Why do you think your position is more important?
I don't know why you're answering my question with a question. You objected and you made an assertion. So why can't you justify it?
No, I'm asking you to justify yours. Then, if you can justify yours, I'll justify mine. But I'm just saying that you are assuming
we're not 3-year-olds. You made an objection. I just want you to warrant your objection. Why if I ask you to warrant your objection, why is your reply for me to warrant a counter assertion?
Because you're assuming that my position needs to be warranted, and I'm saying, well,
you don't think your position should be warranted?
I don't think yours should be either. I don't really think it's something to be justified.
What?
At this point, now I need to do more research about it to see, because I'm not. Well, Duke, I'm asking you to justify your position. I'm asking you to say, why do you believe someone's right?
I'm happy to, but I don't know why you're so recalcitrant to do it yourself.
Here's
It's
why.
Bizarre.
Because if you don't have any justification for your position, but I try to give one, then I think that there's no reason why.
Then you win. Then I'm fucked. You have a point and I don't. Then I'm fucked. What do you mean?
I'm giving you the opportunity to justify yours, because if I don't have a justification,
okay, so you don't. Is that what you're saying?
What did you say?
You're saying you don't have a justification.
No, at least not one that I could give right now. I haven't connected it to my other thoughts, so no. So what's your justification for why someone's subjective ability to receive a subjective response to an action, why do you think that the right to that overrides someone else's right to be able to do something physically? Why do you think that is?
Well, I wouldn't agree with it as such a principled kind of statement like that. But in general, it seems I'm answering. In general, it seems to be the case that Like typically we want to like avoid actions that are not really serving any serious benefit to ourselves, but are infringing upon somebody else who is not harming others. So like a pretty basic normative principle of most functioning societies is that you know, as long as you're doing something that's not harming other people, it's like okay to do. And if you're harming other people in the process of what you're doing, maybe you should think twice about it unless you have a really good overriding justification for that action. Societies seem to function pretty nicely when everyone agrees on a premise like that, because it creates a pretty free and respectful society. And I think most people think that free and respectful societies are good. So that would be the justification that I have.
For being able to receive a subjective response to an action. You think that
it's my justification for why I think that in general people shouldn't do things that diminish somebody else's actions that aren't diminishing other people.
So applying this to the wedding ring thing. So again, you're basically saying, so please correct me if I'm wrong, just trying to understand. So in the case of the wedding ring, you think that your ability, because you're still able to wear a ring, you can do whatever you want, it can still mean whatever it is to you, but you think that you would extend this further. You think that this means that someone's right to receive a subjective response from other people, which is completely subjective. You think that trumps someone's right to actually do something physically, to actually do an action that whose only harm could possibly be for some people. It doesn't even necessarily be for everyone who has value in something. I just don't think that
I don't really know how to even parse this out. I mean, both things are actions. I don't know why you're acting like, I don't know why you're describing it as one being an action and one not. And I don't know why you are like super heavily emphasizing this like subjective idea. If you want to like fall back on a position that like all of these values are subjective and we can't really objectively justify any of them, you can do that, but you're eating yourself in the process of doing so, and you have no leg to stand on yourself. So, I mean, sure, I guess if you want to go for that, not really accomplishing anything at that point.
That's not what I'm going for. My point is that you would you would not approve of somebody wearing a fake wedding ring on account of basically offending somebody who does wear a wedding ring. I'd argue
not offending somebody, no.
That is offending somebody. The only harm.
That's not the account of why I think it's wrong.
My point is that you can't measure objectively how much harm is done by somebody deciding to wear, by other people deciding to wear wedding rings. You're saying that the harm inflicted is that
I can't measure objective harm for anything that I do in my life.
Dude, I'm not finished yet. With all due respect, I was not finished yet. And you're suggesting the only harm that you can point to is that people's ability to express something, which it isn't. That's why I emphasize subjective versus just the physical ability to do what you're doing. You can still express yourself.
It is. No, you can't. You don't have the ability to express yourself that way anymore. It's wrong.
No, you are expressing yourself. You just
went through this.
No, Duke. You are expressing yourself, but you aren't able to get the same subjective response that you could when not as many people wore wedding rings.
Right. So it's not the same kind of expression. The desire of the wedding ring is to be able to express that you are in a sacrosanct partnership with somebody. If you have a world where everybody wears wedding rings, the wedding ring fails to produce that effect. So you do not get to express yourself in that way. Now, if your reply is there are other ways to do this, I agree, which is why I gave the second point that said that there's benefits to certain signaling choices.
Okay.
So
wait.
So you fail to express it in the way in which wedding rings are able to express it.
Yes, but the action of the expression. The thing is, you're still expressing yourself. The thing is, just no one hears it.
You're not expressing yourself that way. No. The whole point of the wedding ring, we agreed to this. The point of the wedding ring, at least one of the points, is to express publicly. If it does not express what you want it to, then it's not an expression.
That's where I would disagree. There's a difference between something not being an expression at all and an expression not working.
Don't get tied up.
Let me give you no, this is important. Let me give you an example. Let's say I want to express to everybody that I love the Chicago Bears. So I wear a Chicago Bears t-shirt and I walk around town. You would agree without any more information. I probably expressed it to most people. Is that right?
Yes, advance, please.
Okay. Now let's say for some bizarre reason, my entire town is blind except for me. Did I still express that I'm a Chicago Bears fan?
Yes, just nobody got the message.
Okay.
You just don't know what the word express means, I guess.
All right, look it up in the dictionary. Or would you prefer a philosophical definition?
Oh god, it doesn't matter what the little.
I mean, I'm happy to. So, express is to convey in words by gesture or conduct, to communicate something, to indicate something, to demonstrate something, to reveal something. How are you doing any of those things in a situation where the society is blind?
Well, you're still communicating. No one is receiving.
How are you? You're not. What? If we're just going to keep going down the rabbit hole, what do you think the word communicate means? How is there communication if nobody is on the other side?
Because it's still qualitatively different than not saying anything at all.
Can I?
Sure, it's displaying something, but it's not communicating something.
Can I step in?
No.
Surely it doesn't matter what word we use. Surely
it does.
No. Surely the whole point of a ring is not to express yourself with SYND's definition of the word expression.
Okay, it's not a private expression; it's a public expression.
Right. Surely the point is that it's public. That's the important part. That it's public. So whether you guys agree on some weird definition of expression that SYND wants is relevant. The whole point is that it's a public expression, right, SYND?
Yes.
Okay, so just go from that.
Okay, then. All right. I think you're right. We should probably stop trifling over this, though. All right. So my point is, Duke, is that the harm that is received when you're no longer able to publicly express yourself, I'll just adopt your language to facilitate. I'll just adopt your language. So I'm just saying that I think that because the harm cannot exactly be quantified or even identified because it's purely subjective, your ability to no longer publicly express something, I don't really think that the harm from that is more important than condemning somebody else and admonishing them to not do something because you want to protect basically the feelings of somebody else, basically their ability to publicly express something. I don't think someone's ability to use symbolic language, I don't think that is more important than someone's ability to actually do something in the physical world or not do something. You see what I'm trying to say, Duke?
And so now we're looping back to 20 minutes ago where I said why, then I'm telling you, SYND. We loop back 20 minutes to where I said why, and then you told me why not, and then we meta debated about justifications, and then I gave you a justification, and now we've completed our circle.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yep.
I believe you gave a justification for why you thought it did. What was that again?
The free and respectful society point.
I disagree. I don't really think that that's a blanket rule that you can apply to all situations. I don't think that.
Where did I say it's a blanket rule you can apply to all situations?
Well, if it isn't, then why should we apply wedding
the general rule that seems to produce some good results? Now, you had a talking point that said, "Oh, we can't objectively know the harms of all the actions that we do." To which I tried to reply, that seems true of everything. I don't think I can objectively give a harm of any action I've ever taken in my entire fucking life. So if we're going to go into a position like that, I don't even know about if I can make a single prescription ever.
Oh, yeah. I agree with you. My point is that you can still identify what the harm is. Identify, say, if somebody got their arm cut off, but you can't really identify the extent to which someone was offended and correlate that to any sort of metric. That's my point.
I don't know why you're talking about offended. I haven't said anything about being offended.
Well, it really is in the realm of offense. I mean, if you're angry that you can't do something and have people respond in the same way, I think that it's rather trivial when compared to, say, if somebody just wants to be able to wear a hat that they want and they can't do that anymore because they have to worry about offending you. Because if everyone wears a fedora, then people who wear fedoras now, they can no longer be identified as neckbeards. Like, I don't really think that right. Everyone's
this is disanalogous because the fedora is not I mean, maybe incidentally has become one, but the fedora is not an intentional choice to signal to other people. Apparently, this is all because you don't you want people to know you're a neckbeard, I guess. But my real point, hold on, my real point is that it's just analogous again because the fedora doesn't exist as a specific intentional public signaling that you are a neckbeard, so it's not analogous.
Actually, it kind of does. In our culture now, it does. Because the wedding ring is a cultural institution. The fedora is now a cultural institution. So here's the analogy. No. I'd like to develop the analogy. I disagree. I'm pretty sure that the fedora now is now like a cultural relic. At least on the internet. So let's say that. So here's the analogy that I'd like to advance. So say
it's a marker from the other direction. You're flipping the directionality here.
Okay, fine. Say it, but just let me develop it first because I don't see how that's true. So I'll just advance.
Oh, it's bad. I'm wrong. Hurry up,
Duke. I simply disagree with you.
I know you disagree, but I already know what point you're gonna make, and then I know what my response is, and I'll move forward.
Well, at least let me make the point. So let's say that wearing a fedora allows you to publicly express that you are a neckbeard, and because of this, just like someone wearing a fake wedding ring. Because of this, if everyone wore a fedora, you would take away someone's ability to express themselves as a neckbeard by wearing a fedora. You would argue, using the same logic to the wedding ring, that the people who wear fedoras who aren't actually neckbeards shouldn't be allowed to wear fedoras because it would harm them. And this is a general rule. You don't think this should apply to every situation, but I don't think...
I know, I get it.
Okay, so why are they different? Why are they different then?
Well, so there's two replies to make. For one, you're getting close to describing something that actually does exist, which is cultural appropriation, which we typically consider to be, in some cases, a bad thing. So if a certain culture has a very heavy specific identity around some kind of article of clothing, we often do find it a little bit insensitive for other people to go around wearing these things in a maybe a disrespectful or insensitive manner. But the second point, which is probably even more important, is that you're just wrong about how the fedora functions in society. So it's not the case that the fedora is something I'm trying to remember the name of the it's a poncho, I think, right? The Mexican little vest thing they wear. I think it's called a poncho, right? Yeah. So it's not the same as a poncho, for example. Where the reason that it exists is some kind of signaling, some kind of cultural identity. This is where I said this is where I said the directionality is incorrect. Where it's we have slowly picked up on fedoras from the other direction as a signal for us, a sign rather than a signal, as a sign that somebody is some kind of neckbeard. But people are not wearing neckbeards, or sorry, people are not wearing fedoras with the intent to express themselves as having this part of this cultural identity of neckbeardedness, which is not even a cultural identity kind of thing. So by contrast, the institution of marriage and the culture of being committed to one partner, this absolutely is a cultural relic that we have. An institutionalized thing, et cetera, and the existence of the wedding ring is specifically to signal something like that. So it's totally disanalogous with the fedora.
I wouldn't say that. I'd say it's actually more a difference of degree. And second of all, even if it isn't, it really is a difference of degree. It's really arbitrary what you claim cultural institution that deserves the kind of application of the rule that you have and one that doesn't.
Of course it's a difference of degree. The degree with marriage is important and the degree with weird shit isn't.
Okay, but I'm saying
this is the problem, SYND. You can be technically correct that there's there's a kind of arbitrariness to it. But it kind of goes down this dilemma that I kind of keep trying to present to you. Either we accept your premise that it's arbitrary and literally everything is, and now we have no justifications whatsoever to make any kind of normative prescriptions, or we accept that there's some degree of arbitrariness to it, but we have cultural and normative and social institutions that just sort of self-fulfillingly accept these kinds of arbitrary demarcations, and then we operate within those from there. So like we recognize, we like have an intuitive recognition that like a marriage, the institution of marriage is different from the institution of the fedora. And because we recognize that, our society operates around that understanding.
Okay, I see. So I think I can agree, but do you admit that the way that you apply the general rules really doesn't, you don't really have a method, like you only know it when you see it. You don't know when it's acceptable to either forbid the action that would diminish the ability of expression or not. Like it really just seems that it's entirely intuitive when you would apply your standards or not. And my point,
I don't think it's entirely intuitive, but there's a big degree of it. And this is like a, sorry if you feel like this is like tangenting or whatever, but I don't really care. I mean, this is like a big like meta issue that I have with your brain, like the way you think about things, is that you're just like incapable of, at least in my view, you're really incapable of grasping like how society functions. And you're like so hung up on this idea, like, oh, but it's all arbitrary at the end of the day. It's all made up. There's all this like, none of it's real. Technically, it's just like a different degree of something. Therefore, everything is fake and subjective, etc., etc. And it's like the phase like I went through, and most of us went through when we were like 15 on Facebook, and it's like, yeah, this is true. And then we have the dilemma that I presented to you. And then we make a choice. We either like go batshit insane with subjectivity, or we subscribe to cultural norms and we move from there.
okay, so here's the thing where I disagree, and I think that your argument isn't really persuasive in that regard. So on one hand, you mentioned that your rule, the way that you apply it, it is, you can't even say that it's a rule. It's only something you'd apply in situations that you think would conform to cultural practices. Okay, so you accept that. But you're also at the same time saying that if anyone does something that you would disagree with, that you think would erode cultural institutions in that way, even though you have no way of telling whether or not it would, you're also saying that it's like, the thing is that you're treating it like it is and it isn't a universal rule. Because if it's only by the situation, I just don't quite see what you're actually. Could you develop that more? Like, what part do you think that I'm lacking? Do you think that I don't comprehend? Because how would it destroy? I don't really
I just
think.
told you.
I know. I'd like you to develop it, please, because I don't think that the way you've applied it, I think it's too generalized for it to make sense. Because my point is that I'm not saying that every time you should disregard certain things, but I'm saying that in this wedding ring example, perhaps I don't really think that someone's ability to subjectively express themselves and receive a response. To be clear, you're conflating that issue with the cultural issue. I'm saying that someone's right to subjectively express themselves and that is receive a subjective response to their action. I don't think that specific thing, I don't think that that trumps someone else's ability to do something.
Why?
It doesn't destroy
Why?
because it doesn't destroy the culture. So I'll just take your position then. It doesn't really need to destroy the culture. Like, I don't know the degree to which you would or wouldn't accept that. Like, the reason why I don't really have a why is because I don't really think that you have one either. Unless
I gave you a why.
It doesn't follow because you haven't shown because my position only leads to bad things if you did that with everything, and I never said that you should do that with everything. I'm just saying generally I don't think that your right to subjectively express yourself, I don't think that trumps someone else's right to actually do stuff.
Why?
Fell off my chair. Oh, my roommate's back. Sorry.
Does that mean the debate's over?
Yeah, we'll have to continue it another time, but I'll think about what you said. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'm just going to say this last thing for you.
Cheating. I think I agree with your position. I need to develop my position where I think that you're right. I need to give a justification because your justification.
Yeah, because I did give a justification, and your response was like, oh, I'm not satisfied with your justification because I think there are problems with it, which begs the question of what your justification is. So we're just like hardcore looping, and it's like, I don't even know. It's like there's not even like there's gonna be a new fallacy term invented for whatever the hell you're doing.
Well, first of all, we're not really looping. And second of all, I just like to say that going forward in our debates, I agree with this and I enjoy talking to you, but I can't help but notice that sometimes when we're debating something, you still bring it back to my character. Like you tell me, I don't think your brain works correctly or something like that. And I'm fine with that, but I don't really think that it's necessary when we're debating something. Because if I'm wrong, I acknowledge that I'm wrong. I think I agree with you. But I must say that I don't really appreciate your trying to psychoanalyze me on this issue just because I have a different opinion than you. But I agree that I would need a justification to explain why I don't think that something like that should happen. But I haven't really looked into this. But I still agree that that would necessarily destroy a culture just to do something that someone else does. Like, I don't agree with you. I most certainly don't agree with you the extent to which cultural appropriation is harmful. But I don't have enough empirical evidence to draw a different approach from you. But do you understand how neither of us really has any concrete case to apply any of these principles to a specific situation? Because your appeal to preserving the culture when it comes to the wedding rings, I don't really think that holds much water regardless, because cultures change. Every culture is an amalgamation of previous cultures. I don't really think that you can say that culture itself as an institution is threatened when someone decides to do something that isn't done that may harm subjective expression. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Where did I say culture as an institution is threatened?
Well, you said that a cultural institution was threatened, and is that not what you were saying, that it did harm the culture? Like, I just don't really see what the harm is unless you're purely...
there's between the word a and the word the.
Then why did you bring up cultural appropriation that is being harmful if it didn't harm the culture in some way?
Because it's an example of a aspect of culture being harmed.
Okay, so again, why are you surprised when I say that when I appeal to culture itself? Because that's what you did. You didn't.
You straw man my position is saying that culture as an institution is somehow eradicated.
Well, that is kind of what their point is. You want to minimize the harm to cultural institutions.
I never said anything to the effect of culture goes away.
That's when you get too much harm inflicted upon an institution, it is destroyed. Is that not why you would want to avoid harm? Because if it continues existing, it's just harmed from time to time. I don't see what you mean by harm then if it doesn't somehow contribute to its destruction.
You know the difference between the word a and the word the?
Yes, I see a, but my point is that you're using a general. You would agree, most likely, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would agree most likely that it's not good to destroy any cultural institutions. Am I correct or am I wrong? And assuming, wait. Assuming that cultural institution isn't harming anyone else. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, you should probably keep it. Yeah.
I would disagree, because every culture is an amalgamation of different cultures, and culture evolves by people doing things outside of the norm. So I would I don't think that a cultural institution, it existing, it not harming anyone, I don't think that you should say that we should keep it and no one should go against it. I think
didn't you preface the first time by saying in general, and I'm agreeing, and now you're pivoting to like more of an absolute statement. So I agree that there can be evolutions in culture. I could agree there can be evolutions in culture that are not harmful and consensually agreed to, that produce new cultures that are also good. That's more than fine.
I had to walk to a different place. I didn't hear some of what you said. Could you please repeat that? Sorry.
You switched it to an absolute statement. I'm more than happy to agree. Stop. I'm more than happy to agree that a culture can evolve over time willingly and consciously in a way that's not hurting people.
Okay, what is it? That's still okay. So if you still agree, so where we disagree, then the reason why first of all, I don't know what you mean by switched it to an absolute statement. I issued one and asked you to agree with it because I'm trying to figure out why you disagree with it.
You switched by saying in general the first time around when you asked the question, and then you stopped using the phrase in general when you went to your next sentence.
Okay, I can't really remember the specific point what you're talking about. So let's just advance, and if I'm wrong and you call me, then just call me out. So you would agree, if I remember you correctly, I had to walk somewhere else, so forgive me if I didn't hear you, but I'm going to state your position, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So you would agree that if a cultural institution exists and it's not harming anybody, you think that, like something with the wedding ring, it doesn't really seem to be harming anybody. You think that it should be respected, and somebody else and people shouldn't be allowed to perform actions that would harm that institution. Is that correct? And harming the institution is defined as making it so it isn't used anymore or contributing to its lack of use. Would you agree?
It's not necessarily something that should be avoided, no.
Okay. So if you don't think that that's something that should be avoided, why do you think that avoiding the destruction of wearing wedding rings, why do you think that that particular culture institution why do you think that harm towards that culture institution should be avoided?
Because the kind of harm that it has is most likely an actual harm. So you're redefining the term harm in a way that nobody intuitively, stop talking, you're intuitively defining harm in a way that doesn't match what people actually think. Because you define harm as just the diminishment of some kind of thing that already exists. Nobody interprets it that way. Harm already has baked into it some kind of thing that is bad, that produces some kind of wrongness or some sense or feeling of wrongness. So the reason why it wouldn't necessarily be harmful in your definition is because the diminishment of a cultural institution can be okay to get rid of insofar as it's not hurting other people and produce something that people consensually, democratically, whatever, agree to. But in a lot of cases, the diminishment of that institution is not going to be the harm, the definition that you're offering. It's going to be a harm in a negative sense that produces some kind of bad experience to other people. So the kind of prescription that you're talking about that basically says, fuck these people who like have sacrosanct relationships with other people. They don't get to express this anymore. They don't get to have like healthy marriages that are like shown to other people and enjoy that fact, and express it publicly and share with others and demonstrate like their loyalty to a partner. We're taking that away from them, and that ostensibly is going to cause some kind of pain or some kind of harm to the people that they don't get to do something like that anymore. So it's a different kind of harmful, and that's one that I would typically reject.
Okay, I disagree with that. Many studies show, and I can send you the empirical. Oh, wait. Oh, my phone's at 1%. Let me get back. So 1 second.
So can I just ask you, do you actually believe are you actually like skeptical or adverse to the institution of like marriage and wedding rings, or are you just pursuing this for the sake of argument?
I don't think he's listening right now. He's at his phone is on 1%.
Oh.
Can we just talk about how awesome this is and how much we all miss this and how wrong you guys were in getting him banned and not doing anything about this? Can we just admit this to ourselves right now?
Oh, I don't agree. I want him to continue to be banned.
You're drunk.
Read the nickname. Read the nickname. Otto, read it out. What's it say?
It says 250% wrong.
Okay.
I'm back.
It's 7 a.m. and I'm staying up for this. This is how great this is.
Okay, Duke. This is where I disagree with you. I don't necessarily think, that it's good to avoid pain. For example, there are many studies that find that happiness itself, that's in general psychological well-being, isn't just avoiding pain, because there is empirical evidence.
I don't care. That doesn't fucking matter.
No, dude.
What the fuck is this pivot? I don't give a shit. Sure, that's fine. That's fine. It's not just pain. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. That's fine. None of that fucking matters. I don't care.
Stop interrupting me. I wasn't even done yet.
It doesn't fucking matter.
Dude, yes, it does, because where we disagree is you think that generally we should avoid it because of the type of harm you're talking about, psychological harm. Am I not correct?
No. Duke, I'm just going to speak for Duke. Duke's
Jesus fuck.
All right, Duke doesn't think pain is wrong, like always. I'm sure. I think pain thinks that if there's some pain with some kind of purpose, it can be good. I just think that he doesn't, and pretty reasonably so, that getting rid of the institution of marriage or wedding rings is some kind of cost now that it will reap irreparable benefits in the future. I think is his point. I think his point is that whatever pain the person will suffer, or people will suffer from not being able to express their marriage publicly, will probably outweigh whatever benefit we're talking about. I think is the point. He doesn't agree categorically that it's bad. Is my mic cutting out, by the way?
That's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, also empirically demonstrating that pain is good is
I could send you studies.
Don't worry. I've read enough philosophy to bullshit.
What?
This pivot is idiotic and useless.
Wait, dude,
I don't.
Dude, please stow your hostility.
You know that you're telling me to wait, and then you're going to tell me to say what I was already going to say.
No, I was asking you to stop getting so angry. Like there's no reason for you to.
Well, I'm going to do what I want. Sorry.
All right. Well, that's hard.
You seem to not care very much about offense earlier, so try not to get offended now at my choices that I'm making.
You're missing my point. You just did what amounts to the harm of the wedding ring. Why shouldn't people be able to wear a wedding ring?
Okay,
you have to be trolling at this point if you're asking me why I don't think people should wear the wedding rings.
No, Duke. You have demonstrated yourself that you are willing to conduct actions whose harm is on the same level as people not being able to express themselves with wedding rings anymore. That is the same level of harm. So it's my point. It's clear that you don't care about that.
Wait, like what? Like what? What have I endorsed that is a comparable harm?
The only harm that comes from offending people in conversation from speech is the same as the only harm that comes from people no longer being able to express themselves through wearing a wedding ring. It's on the same level. And it's clear that there are many instances where you and other people don't care about that type of harm. But suddenly when it comes to the institution of wearing wedding rings and being able to express yourselves, suddenly for some reason that same category, you can then say, oh, well, you shouldn't wear fake wedding rings because you're taking away the people's ability to express.
Are you saying like the harms caused by the degradation of this specific portion of the institution of marriage is like the same kind of thing as what? As like me doing something that makes people upset? I don't know what you're referring to.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's largely subjective. You can't really measure it.
I don't care about subjectivity. I just want you to be more concrete. Like, what are you saying that I am doing that is comparable?
I'm saying that what you're doing, say your tone of voice or something that can offend people. I'm saying that that's on the same level as the offense.
It's not offending you.
No, wait. I'm saying it's on the same level as the type of harm that the people who can no longer express themselves with a wedding ring would have to deal with. You can't really quantify it.
How?
Does anyone want to skip over?
Wait, whoa. How the fuck can you say it's on the same level and then in the same breath say that it's not quantifiable?
Because, I mean, on a qualitative sense, there's no physical harm. It's largely mental. That's what I mean. It's qualitatively...
What?
It's largely qualitatively the same. That's what I mean.
I don't know what qualitatively the same means, and apparently mental harms aren't relevant anymore.
No, Duke, I'm trying to explain. You can't there's no physical harm, and it functions the same way. It's largely just mental harm. That's it. That's what I mean on it being the same level. Their qualities are the same. You can't really distinguish the two. I imagine you could if you analyze it. So, but I'm just saying they're largely both.
I can distinguish the difference between married people losing a simple ability to express their marriage versus the way I talk to you in Discord. Yeah, I can fucking differentiate that.
How are they different in terms of harm received? The harms are both mental.
Are you receiving harm right now?
My point applies to anybody. It's not
answer my question. Nope. Answer my question. Are you receiving harm right now?
No, but that is irrelevant because my point is that
what the fuck? How the fuck is that irrelevant? If your question is you're telling me to demonstrate, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. You're telling me shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. You're telling me to demonstrate how the harms that you receive are not the same as the harms of institutional marriage being hurt for those who are married. And then I ask you, are you being harmed? And you say no. All I have to do is give you some kind of semblance of a fucking thought that the people who are married are harmed in some way, and then bam, exactly what you asked me to do is demonstrated. There's harm in situation B, there is not harm in situation A. We can't quantify them exactly. They are in fact subjective, but they are also clearly different. Where is the error here?
You're missing the point. My point is that anybody in general, if anybody's being talked to and you're offending them, my point is that that's what you clearly don't care about in many instances. My point is that that's
sometimes Duke's a hypocrite. This isn't relevant.
Yeah, this is pure just.
The fact that Duke is a hypocrite doesn't mean his argument. It's a simple point. Everyone kind of knows it by this point. I'm sure they've all read the two quoque fallacy. It's like a known thing.
Yep.
Okay, I probably should have made clear that I was just trying to dismantle the reasoning behind that position then.
Yeah, the way in which you're dismantling it, as Zara said, is a tu quoque fallacy.
Okay. So the reason why I was trying to do that was to demonstrate to you that your reason for having that position at all didn't make sense. Because if you're freely able to dish out the harm whenever you see fit, then you really don't have much of a justification to be able to make a proclamation that no, you generally shouldn't wear a fake wedding ring due to some nebulous reason for cultural degeneration or something like that. That's my point. My point is it's on the same level. So the fact that
it's
you
not on the same level. I just demonstrated how it's not on the same level.
No, you didn't, because you missed the point. My point is that even though I'm not being offended, my point is that if you did offend me or anyone else, is that harm would be the same. That's the point where you missed. But no, you thought that when you asked me, you think that because I, in particular, not offended.
It's not relevant. It's a two
it's yeah. Not only is it a fallacy, but it's also a deference to some other hypothetical that it doesn't describe the situation right now. You make a false assumption that I'm going to behave around other people the same kind of way that I behave around you. Why do you think why do you have that assumption that I behave identically with you that I do with other people?
I don't think it's identically, but I have seen you offend people, of course.
Okay.
It's a reasonable assumption. I have seen you offend people.
Okay, so let's say it's the case that some of my actions have caused some people to be taken some small offense. Why on earth is this something that is even remotely in the same ballpark as the harm caused by the destruction of an integral part of the institution of marriage?
Because they're both mental harms that are.
You're telling me why are they? You're telling me why they are of the same kind. I'm not asking you that question. I'm asking you why, degree-wise, they are even remotely close to each other.
Because my point is that the degree doesn't really matter, because it can be. Because they're ultimately, if it happens enough, then people will find other ways to express themselves. So condemning somebody for doing what I was talking about, it doesn't. There's no reason to stop people.
This is not an answer to the question. You're making a principled claim that the degrees don't matter insofar as they are the same kind. You're not justifying that. Why are the difference in degree not matter insofar as they are the same kind?
Because you're able to justify anything if we just accept what you're saying. It depends on what you think, what you feel, or whether or not somebody should or shouldn't be able to trump someone else's right of being able to receive a subjective. Right.
That's exactly right. That is how society works. Society works on quasi-arbitrary limits for things that seem to work okay. And we produce normative prescriptions out of those. This is what I told you 45 minutes ago. That we start with this like edgy 15-year-old Facebook position that everything is like made up or like kind of arbitrary. And then we realize, well, sure, that's kind of true. And then we move fucking past that.
Yes, but where you're wrong is that cultural institutions change. Your position would.
I don't dispute the cultural institutions change. Wait. How is I wrong? I can't let you go further. I cannot let you go further.
Yes, you can.
I cannot. I can't because you were saying something that I've never said. Where the fuck have I said cultural institutions don't change? Where the fuck have I said this?
I was trying.
It doesn't matter. You don't need to give me more. I've never fucking said this. Why is it the start of your sentence?
I'm trying to explain why it was important. You can't just interrupt people.
It's not. I already know it's not important because I never said it.
No, you don't, because you don't know why I'm bringing that up.
Okay, unless you're gonna say you're bringing it up because you're demonstrating how wrong you are. Maybe I'm wrong.
No,
maybe you might be doing that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Please listen. I never said that you said it. My point is that because cultural institutions change, my argument is that your position unnecessarily hinders cultural evolution. That is what I was about to say before you so rudely cut me off. With all due respect.
Yes, it does. Demonstrate how it does. Demonstrate how it does. Let me guess. You're gonna make me demonstrate the opposite.
No. Here's how it does.
Yep.
Because if you're willing to say that for someone to not be able to do something different that isn't usually done solely for the purpose of protecting someone's ability to receive a response for their expression, the benefits, all of which are subjective, which I mean are completely mental. There's no metric that you can use to even remotely quantify it, versus physical harms. My point is that because you are limiting the abilities of action to occur for the sake of someone's subjective cultural someone's subjective cultural notions. My point is that can stifle evolution of culture because you're limiting the ability of someone to undertake an action.
What's
Can
the
you
harm
see
of stifling that?
Because
what's the harm of stopping it?
Well, why do you disagree? Okay, so
No, what's the harm of stopping it? What's the harm of stopping it?
What's the harm of stopping cultural evolution?
Yep.
Well, if you make it so culture can't change as easily, well, there are all kinds of harms. People may not be more skeptical of technology, even though that there may be no more physical harm from the technology. All kinds of things. Do I really need to argue to you why?
No, you don't.
Hmm?
No, you don't. You don't
You
need to argue
do,
that
because
point.
this is the same. I mean, you're saying, oh, I'm like operating in this like magical, like bizarre, subjective mental world where we don't know anything at all about what's going on. But apparently, you know for sure that it's really harmful to stop like cultural evolution. But it sounds like I can say the same thing you said. Oh, you're trying to say that it's bad that we're stopping culture from progressing, but these are all like unquantifiable, subjective mental harms. We don't know for sure what's going to happen, so you can't say any of these things are bad. What mistake am I making there?
The mistake you're making is that once you talk about limiting people's actions, there's much more empirical evidence that people not being allowed to do something can have harms. Do you not agree with that?
Great. So aren't we limiting the ability for someone to express via a wedding ring that they are someone who is married?
No actions are being limited there. They are
Yes,
no
they
longer.
are.
No, they can still wear a wedding ring, as we said earlier.
I can't. We went through this. Express in this context
you are
means
misunderstanding.
I will change the question. I will change the question to be more clear for you because you don't know the word express means. Let me ask the question again. Let me ask the question again. Let me ask the question again. Aren't you changing the ability to publicly express the fact that you're married via a wedding ring? Yes or no?
Not really physically. You are just not able to express it because people don't respond in the same way. But you are still not.
So the answer is yes. You're not able to publicly express it anymore via a wedding ring.
Action. It's not really a physical action that you're limiting. My point is that once you start physical actions, such as actually putting on a fake wedding ring in order to do something else, my point is that unnecessarily could limit cultural evolution, because if you apply that in any meaningful sense, and you do, because if you Duke, wait, I'm almost
done. You're not responding to me.
No, I am responding. You aren't comprehending why I'm bringing up things that I aren't. Why they're not. And you even said earlier that you don't care if you bring up something that I think is tangential. So please allow me to.
No, I didn't.
You did. You did say earlier. You even said, I'm going to bring up something tangential, but I don't care if you think it is or not. You did say that.
Yeah, I don't care. I care if you do it.
Oh, okay. So you can do it, but I can't.
Because yeah, that's correct.
Okay, why?
Because mine's a meta point about you, and this is something tangential to the substance, because you ostensibly care about the substance of the conversation, and you're making a tangential point that you think is substantial to the conversation. So I care because you care about substance, and I think that you're deviating from the substance.
It actually is substantial. You could say it isn't all you want, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. You'll be misunderstanding. But as I'm saying, when you limit physical actions, you do run the risk of hindering cultural evolution, especially when the only harm from those physical actions is caused by people having those solidified notions of culture, which I'd argue the subjective harm is nowhere near the potential harm from limiting physical actions. So, and the reason why I brought up the ring expression thing again, which you thought was a loop, which it isn't, the reason why I brought that up is because even though, yes, the ability of expression is limited, it's only limited because people don't respond in the same way. But the ability to take that action of expression, that is not affected at all. Whereas if you...
It is. You just agreed. You said it's not. You said it's limited, but also, by the way, it's not limited.
No.
Perhaps more importantly here is this like really, really, really bad straw man, where you're presuming that the way in which I'm prescribing we limit actions is some kind of like draconian physical measure that prevents people from doing things. Like we jail people who choose to wear wedding rings when they're not married. If that's the case, it's obviously going to produce like very, very clear physical harms like you're talking about. But I'm not prescribing something like that. So I really don't know. Like, there's just no base for this point that you're making.
Well, actually, no, because we both agreed earlier that cultural pressure can affect action. So my point is that any kind of pressure like that, to where the only thing you're protecting is people's subjective notions of their ability to express themselves, on that level. My point is that you still shouldn't limit action solely for the sake of the types of harms that you're describing. And I actually made a subtle distinction there. I said that the ability is limited in the sense that people will no longer respond in the same way. But that's different than people actually being able to do something or not, and there being pressure against that.
They're
So
not
my point
able to do it anymore.
Hmm?
They are not able to do it anymore.
Yes, they can still wear a wedding ring. They just don't reap the same effects. Therefore,
Yes, they're not able to do it anymore. When I say it, what do you think I'm referring to?
You're referring to two things. You're referring to the physical abilities to do that, i.e., wearing the wedding ring, and
I'm not at all.
Okay, well, I'm referring to both. So again, our
I don't
definition.
care about number one. I've told you like 17 times. Number one is trivially unchanged. So what do you think number two is?
What's number one? What are you referring to?
The one you just said. Do I have to repeat your own sentences?
What's
Go to
number
number two?
Never,
Go to number two. Go
I
to
u-
number
never
two.
u- I never use number one or number two. I genuinely
You
do
want
not.
a VOD that you literally did. You want a VOD that proves that you did.
That proves that I said number one and number two. What?
You hadn't said number two yet. You had said number one already.
What he was referring to, you said you're referring to two things. Number one,
Oh,
and
yes.
then Duke's asking you for number two.
Okay. Number one is the ability to physically do something, wearing the wedding ring. That part of expression is being able to physically do something. The second part, which I would disagree takes precedence over the first, being able to physically do something, is being able to receive a response and have the subjective validation and people responding in the same way to it. That's what I agree would no longer you'd be able to do.
Yep.
But the degrees of action are not the same. It's not the same as saying that as someone no longer being able to do a physical action, as in, and what I mean by no longer being able to do it, I mean there being cultural pressure against somebody actually performing the physical component of an action. Because your argument is that there should be cultural pressure for people to not perform a physical action, but there should not be cultural pressure against people being able to receive a response for something solely because of the subjective benefits. That's what my point was. Do you see what I'm saying now? The reason, like,
I've understood
that's
this
not
for the last hour. I've already responded to this.
Duke, it's not the same argument. It really is not. Because we both agree that yes, expression, you can no longer express yourselves. My point is that it doesn't really matter because I'm talking about being able to physically do something versus that trumping someone else's ability to do something else. And the reason I gave for that was cultural evolution.
The deprivation of
And
people's ability to express themselves produces lots of problems societally, mentally, and consequently physically.
Okay. So do you have actually wait, no, I don't think you need to go down that route. I'm arguing that those harms are less than limiting people's ability to actually do things. Because our minds are very, very malleable, but the physical reality in which we live is far more difficult to change. So my argument is that the harms.
Can you clarify what you mean by limiting? Because this does a lot of heavy lifting here. When you say I think we should limit people's ability to do this, this phrase can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. So can you be more clear by what you mean when you say I'm limiting people's ability to do this?
You're trying to pressure people into not doing it culturally. You think that the cultural pressure is acceptable and that should be promoted.
Sure. Yep. Okay.
I'm saying that you should not use cultural pressure to suppress actions. And then this is a general rule, like everything. That's what we're saying. Yours is a general rule, mine is a general rule, but they can still be broken. My point is that you should not use cultural pressure to suppress physical actions when the only harm is limiting somebody's ability to express themselves that hinges entirely on the subjective, because you're not limiting anybody's ability to physically do something. My point is that there's more harm in using cultural pressure to suppress actions than it is to suppress people's ability to receive cultural role.
And which is why this is really important. Sorry, this is really important. This is why your entire prescription fails. Because by your own litmus test, we shouldn't have everyone going around wearing wedding rings. Because everyone going around wearing wedding rings makes a cultural suppression of the a segment of the institution of marriage, and it doesn't produce any physical harms like you're talking about. So there's no reason to do this.
No, that's where you're wrong. my entire point is that because no physical actions are being affected by that, you're not, because people can still wear wedding rings because of that, it should not be favored over the cultural pressure
Yeah.
that would. What were you saying?
You're sorry. I think you're right here on this point. I mean, I think the fact, like, not letting someone wear a wedding ring is physically restricting them, but
I'm not
indirectly,
advocating. Wait, why are you
No,
endorsing the straw man of SYND? I'm not advocating for us restraining people from wearing wedding rings. What the fuck is this straw man?
Oh, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like, I mean, I agree with.
You are.
I don't mean to. I don't mean to. What I'm simply saying is that even if we treat, let me just grant that SYND is right. Then, sorry. Let me just grant that SYND is right, that we are physically restricting someone from wearing a ring. Okay, I don't think that's too important. I think SYND would agree that we shouldn't like go around like saying slurs to people and just being like a general asshole to people, right? Like, SYND, do you agree with that?
Yeah, because they're.
Do you think
Yes.
that's analogous to this situation?
Like analogous to the wedding ring thing?
Yeah.
Maybe about that.
We're undermining some kind of like, I don't know, social fabric by disapproving of certain like
Well,
physical actions.
isn't the better analogy to the wedding band thing like everyone dressing up like a police officer or something? Where it's
That works.
like the problem here is that you're sort of sapping the signal that that this object or this like talisman is meant to communicate, like sapping it of that specialized meaning and giving it like sort of polluting the meaning in a way that can make it more difficult to communicate what was being communicated before.
Yeah, that definitely
Agree with
I
you,
mean,
Boley. One difference that I'd like to draw. I'd say that what makes that different from the wedding ring thing is that there are physical harms from people not being able to tell who a cop is, whereas with the wedding ring thing, there really isn't physical harm from people.
When we say physical, I think we're meant to include psychological harms there, right?
Not necessarily, because, for example, if someone cop pulls you over and they're dressed like a police officer and they say that they're
I
taking
understand that that's a distinction there, right? What I'm suggesting is we still find it objectionable even when the harms aren't like injury to my tissue, but instead is like going like the example of going around insulting people and being an asshole. That creates like emotional harm, right? Do you think emotional harm is something that's worth like having a norm against?
Yes, but I don't think that it
Do you,
should.
do you agree that emotional harm is physical harm?
No, not really. It can.
Okay. So then there are some forms of non-physical harm, specifically there's at least emotional harms, some of which are worth having norms against to some degree.
Yeah, some.
Sure.
But I don't think
So then the
here.
question here should just be about whether you think the sort of emotional struggle, like currently when you wear a wedding band, there's a certain amount of satisfaction to that, right? There's a certain amount of like celebration of your position and your relationship with this person. There's a sort of like cultural recognition of that. You fit into society in a particular way, and you feel that you there might be like emotional well-being centered around that feeling of fittingness, the feeling of belonging in a particular role or being viewed in a particular way. So I think the question is just how much would, if you were to like basically remove the ability to communicate that role via wearing a wedding ring, how much that would disrupt that, right? If people would just, instead of wearing a wedding ring, would start wearing like a wedding bandana or like some other wedding jewelry or something like that, then you could still express it, right? And maybe eventually over time that would become as like cemented in our cultural consciousness as wearing a wedding band is currently, in which case there wouldn't necessarily be a whole lot of like long-term disruption. But it seems to me that if the disruption is large enough, if like you have a bunch of people who are married who are now like unable to feel that like emotional satisfaction, that feeling of fittingness, it seems to me that that's a detriment. And if that can be avoided through like a pretty non-intrusive cultural norm, then it seems like that might be worth it, as long as the norm itself wasn't too burdensome, right?
Well, when you say it like that, yeah, I think I'd agree that yes, there are situations where Duke would be correct, where yeah, you probably shouldn't perform a physical act if there really isn't. Yeah, I think I'd agree, but when it comes to this situation, see, this is where let me think about that. I think I agree that yes, and if that case, if I agree, then that would mean that yes, I concede. I think Duke, you are correct that you generally shouldn't. Actually, the one place where I think we still disagree, just to be clear, and the reason why I'm coming back to our disagreement is because I'm trying to better communicate. I think that generally you shouldn't try to limit someone's ability to physically do something at the expense of what Bolia you're talking about. But I think my new position would be that if the, say, emotional harm is great enough, I think that, yes, you probably shouldn't do something physically. So in that case, I think we'd agree. Duke, would you agree with that? I think where we only disagree is that you, generally, Duke, you seem your default position before you analyze a situation. I think and please correct me if I'm wrong, Duke, I think your default position would be that you generally shouldn't do something if there stands to be a risk, like, of emotional harm to somebody. I think my position would be that generally you should be able to do something and as the default position, but only if the harm is too great emotionally, then you shouldn't do it. So I think that that's where we would only disagree at this point. But I think we can both agree, Duke, that the emotional harm can override the cultural pressure to not do something, and the harms from that. Would you agree, Duke?
No fucking clue what that word vomit was even asking.
What? Okay, let me just be more clear then. I considered what Bolyai said, and I think I agree with him. I think I agree that cultural pressure against physical actions, the ability to do something physically, I think that it can be warranted if the emotional harm is great enough, and it could be even considered great enough if it actually has effects, like it erodes like the institution of marriage and it makes it so people are less likely to get married and have children, stuff like that. I think that's, yes, I think that I'd agree with that. But I still think that in general, as a default position, where I think you disagree, is that and this is based off of everything I know about you. And the only reason why I'm mentioning you is because I'm trying to see if we can, is because I'm trying to pinpoint where we agree and disagree. I think that where we disagree is that I have as a default position that you should generally, when you approach a situation that you haven't analyzed, that you should be able to just give priority to being able to conduct a physical action, to perform a physical action, versus emotional harm, where it seems that when you approach situations, you seem to place more weight on the emotional harm resulting from that. Do you see what I meant?
Sure.
So I think that that's where we disagree. I think that our only significant disagreement at this point is that you just prioritize protecting people emotionally at the expense. He's still here. At the expense of people being able to perform certain actions. And I think we just disagree in that. I would prioritize more physical actions when we don't approach a situation to that. So do you think we both agree on this, that those are our differences? And if so, I think we could advance.
Sure.
Okay, then. So, Bolly, I'd like to thank you because thank you for pointing that out. I think I'd agree. Does anyone else have anything to say about this? Like, have I not been clear? If so, I'll say it again.